Hi, welcome to this episode of Your Black Education. I'm your host, Professor Roosevelt Mitchell III. And today's topic is how to get a return on your education. I am joined today by Mr. Anthony Kent, who is the author of the book, The Youth Advisor. And we are going to discuss to young college kids on how to get a return on an investment of your college degree. Because many college students or students in general go to college and they end up with a degree and ultimately do not know how to monetize. So they are stuck with a high student loan repayment and high student loan debt with no way of paying it off or no way of even figuring out how to use that degree or that investment in order to make money and provide for their family. So how's it going today, Anthony?
Pretty good, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Man, I thank you so much for your time because I know that you are very, very busy. So can you explain a little bit about how to get a great return on education?
Yeah, definitely. But before we kind of dive into things, one glaring statistic is that 87% of college students are graduating every year without a job. So that means out of the 87,
Wow.
only 13% of us are actually getting jobs when they graduate for college, from college. But the most important thing about getting a return on education is actually understanding the business of education, because it is a business. And a lot of students don't look at college as a business. They look at it as a educational institution, but it's a business just like any other company.
Exactly.
And so let's think of a college in terms of a company, right? Every company offers products and services, right? And the school's products and services are the majors that you would choose to go into. So it's just like when you buy a cell phone, right? So let's say you got a new iPhone, right? So you buy the new iPhone, you get it home, you get all the new software up and going, and then you start to think to yourself, well, maybe it doesn't have a lot of the features and it's not functioning as I thought it would, right? So in that case, you can box it back up and take it back to the store, right, and get your money back.
Right.
They'll give you a full refund. But when you go to school to get education and you don't think you got what you should have gotten, like, you don't get a job or things aren't going as planned, well, guess what? At that point in time, you can't get a refund.
No, you stuck. You can't even write it off. You stuck with college. You stuck with student loans.
Definitely. So you're definitely, so it's like when you don't get that job, it's like, well, the joke's on you. So what do I do now?
Right.
So I would say that's the first thing you should also always consider before you actually start college. Make sure you understand the business side of getting an education.
Yes, because I looked at a news segment the other day, and it stated this major college was an extension of the University of Missouri here in St. Louis, called UMSL, University of Missouri at St. Louis, and they needed to cut back on their budget, and they said that they were going to cut, I think, $30 million or something, but they said 85 to 87% of their budget was salaries to staff and faculty. So as a student, you go into these institutions and most of your money is going towards salaries for staff and faculty. So how much of that is actually going towards the education, right?
Yeah, definitely. And of course, most schools, they have career services departments, right? And of course, I'm pretty sure any career services office is going to do what they can do to make sure their students have jobs. But it's at the end of the day, it's really on the student to make sure that they get a job before they graduate. If you're just there and you got A's and you got good grades, that really doesn't mean anything because all the other students at school have good grades as well. So when you're in college, it's all about how you separate yourself from everyone else. Like, do you have an internship? Did you do a co-op? Do you have that work experience? Because when recruiters come to college campuses, they're looking to see what separates you from everyone else. So you have to make sure that you're taking the necessary steps to put yourself in a position to get that job. Because reality is, 6 months after you graduate, those student loans are due.
Right. So let me ask you this, Anthony. How can students get that job experience? Because I'll tell you about myself. My major was finance all the way up until my senior year, but I came to a point to where it was time for me to do an internship, and I went to every bank in the next 3 counties, and wouldn't anyone give me a chance to do an internship. So I was so frustrated that I wanted to drop out of school, but I ended up taking a semester off and going back and changing my major to something else because I knew that I couldn't get a valid shot in that area. So how can someone get that job experience?
Well, of course, there's multiple ways to skin a cat, right? So there's a lot of organizations that are designed to help students get internships. For example, there's one organization called En-ROADS. I don't know if are you familiar with En-ROADS?
Yes.
Well, for example, myself, I was involved in En-ROADS, and a lot of my coworkers around the Charlotte area, we all attended En-ROADS, or participated in En-ROADS. So,
can you explain En-ROADS for our viewers?
So En-ROADS is a organization designed to help minority college students get internships, right? So the great thing about it is some of the largest companies in the world, they give us internships. Well, I don't want to say give us internships. They give us the opportunity to interview for internships. So you still have to compete for these internships. So when I was in school, my first internship was with Sara Lee, the cake company. So Sara Lee at that point in time, of course, is one of the largest corporations in the world. Sara Lee owned Hanes Brands. They own a ton of meat companies, cookies. You name it, if it's dealing with food, they probably own it. So, and I was in Winston-Salem at that time, so that was my first internship in the IT department. My second internship was with the IBM. So you can imagine, I'm graduating, I'm at the top of my class, and to add to that, I have 2 internships to add to my resume. So, in terms of me interviewing and competing with other students in my school to get jobs, that definitely put me, in front of the pack because I had the internship experience. So, like I said, there's other organizations that are out there. Of course, paid internships are a little harder to get than unpaid internships, but if you find yourself in a position where you can't get a paid internship, you should definitely try to work out a deal where you can get an unpaid internship because you're still getting that experience. Because typically, if you're going to an interview, no one's going to ask you, hey, was this a paid or unpaid internship? That question more than likely is not going to be asked. So my first suggestion is, do your research. Look at the companies that you want to work for. A lot of times companies post internship opportunities on their websites. Like, let's say if you go to like a Duke Energy or a Bank of America or Wells Fargo, depending on what industry you're in, they'll actually have those internships available. If you don't see them on the internet, you definitely need to pay a visit to your career services department, right? Because, of course, the people in career services, they get a salary, right? And they're there to make sure you get a job. So you need to make sure that you're building a relationship with them. One thing students don't do, I see a lot of students don't do, as soon as you enter school your freshman year, right? Within that first week, if not the first day, you should make sure you pay a visit to your career services department. Make sure they know you by first name. Tell them what your future goals are, and tell them some companies that you're interested in. So that means from year 1 when you're there all the way up until year 4 when you're about to graduate, they already know what you want to do. They already engaged with different companies you want to intern at or more than likely work for afterwards. So those would be my initial steps. Build a relationship with career services, let them know where you want to work at, and also you got to do your research yourself because they can put you in position to get that internship or that job. But then, when you're in front of an employer, from there is your responsibility to make sure that you sell yourself and get that job that you want.
Okay, what if a freshman or a sophomore does not know what they want to do? So what other opportunities or what other decisions should they make in order first trying to figure out what they want to do after they graduate?
Well, actually, so really what you're saying should that's kind of being in the late stacks. You know what I'm saying? The bad thing is you should not be graduating college not knowing what you want to do because you already have a degree.
Right. Well, or even, because I think most people are, a majority of people do not declare their major to probably their sophomore years. So, if they should go in their freshman year and go to career services and become acquainted, what if they don't know exactly what they want to do yet? Because I went to college. I was my first in my family to ever go to college. And the only reason I went to college was just because I felt like I had no other options. And how I picked my major was I asked my buddies what they was majoring in, and they said finance. I said, okay, well, I do it too. All right, so someone like that, is there any other services or like any skills tests or anything that a college student can take in order to figure out first what they want to major in?
Well, I can't speak to different skills tests. I know that things out there that can kind of point you in that direction of where you might be best suited. Actually, what I would say is the best thing to do is initially is to kind of look at your look at your grades, right? See how you're performing in school. Now, of course, if you haven't declared a major yet, then of course you have those general classes that everyone takes, right? So that won't really help you to understand what direction you want to head in. But what I would say is to actually help you along the way. I would say connect with people that you know, right? Let's say if you have any of your friends' parents or just people you're surrounded around, you might want to kind of shadow them, right? And understand if these are jobs that you want to actually work in, right? So let's say, for example, yourself, right? Finance, right? So there's banks everywhere, right?
Right.
So I don't know if you had a relationship with anyone in banking, but my first step would be is to, if you go to a church or any organization, find someone who works in an industry that you might potentially be interested in working in. Say, hey, can you tell me a little bit about what you do on a daily basis? Is there an opportunity where I might be able to come in and possibly shadow you? Because the best thing is to do is to understand, hey, is this something that I could do on a daily basis, right? Because a lot of people don't understand their actual work environment. Like, for example, do you want to have a job where you stand up all day? It's cool to stand up all day when you're young, right? But let's say 20 years into the game, are you going to have back issues?
Right.
See, the thing is, when students pick majors, they don't think about the long term. What does life look for you 20 years later? So the best thing to do is get exposure in those actual industries. So let's say if you want to be an engineer, right? You want to be an engineer at a power company. Well, the first thing you should do is go speak to an engineer, understand what they do on a daily basis, actually go shout them, see what that work life is about, and then ask questions from there. So my first thing I would say is find someone that you admire or find someone that works in an industry, and then shadow them, ask questions. Because the worst thing you could do is go to school for 4 years and then graduate and not want to do anything with that major. Because essentially you kind of just wasted your time there.
You wasted not just time but money. And this discussion is about getting a great return on your education. I was watching the Susie Orman show probably 6 months ago, and one lady phoned in. She was a teacher, and she owed like almost $50,000 in student loans, and was asking Susie, should she go back and get her doctorate, and it was only going to cost X amount of dollars, but it was going to vastly improve her income, right? So my mind firstly went into, it doesn't take $150,000 in student loan debt to become a teacher. What was she going to be in the first place? Because it sounds like she may have been going to medical school or law school and raked up all that amount of loans, and then decided, oh, this is not what I want to do. I want to teach, right?
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying? So that was almost like $100,000 mistake.
Correct.
So I'm with you. The first thing students should do is discover exactly what they want to do, because if not, you will find yourself taking classes and wasting money every semester on classes that are just useless to you because you have no interest in them.
And actually, to go one step further, when I'm talking to young adults, I tell them the first thing you need to do is you need to ask yourself, what lifestyle do you want to live? Which is very, very important. So, do you like nice cars? Do you want to have a big house? Do you want to be entertained? How much is that lifestyle going to cost you, right? So you should take a lifestyle and then find B major that's going to lead you to that career path. So if you want to live a lifestyle that costs you to be in a six-figure range to live that lifestyle, you need to pick a major that's going to produce that lifestyle. So, for example, in North Carolina, right, in Charlotte, for example, teachers make around 40 grand, right, around a 40 grand mark. So you can go to a public school and become a teacher, right? So let's say you go to public school and you end up paying like anywhere from $35,000 to $45,000, right?
Okay.
Which isn't that bad nowadays, right?
Not bad at all these days.
Yeah, compared to the average cost of going to school. Now, also in North Carolina, you would find like a Wake Forest, right, or a Davidson College. Davidson College, I think right now is anywhere between $50,000 to $55,000 per year, right? Which is crazy. So that means you would graduate owing $200,000 in debt, right?
Easy.
But guess what? You can go to Davis College. Let's say you went to Davis College to be a teacher. Guess what? In Charlotte, in Mecklenburg County, they don't care where you went to school at. Guess how much they're still going to pay you? You're going to get that $40,000, right? So
Right.
that's so now we're going back to return on education, right? If you're going to be a teacher and you can get the same teacher degree going to school paying 40,000, why would you go to a school that's going to make you pay 80,000 or 100,000? You're going to get the same salary at the end of the day. So more importantly, when you're picking a major, you need to say to yourself, well, what school can I go to get the same degree that's going to give me this job or the income that I want to bring in, right? So when you're looking at that, you need to say, hey, I need to make sure I don't overspend on my education. Because there's a lot of big name schools, these brands, like for example, some household names, like you got your Duke University, Carolina, Texas, UCLA, which are awesome schools to go to, right? But depending on what major you pick, it's not necessarily a smart move to go to that school because look how much money you're going to have to pay back.
Right. Right. Just for a name, just for essentially a name.
Correct.
And I agree. And it took me years into the game before I realized that a lot of people want to go to certain schools because of the name, because of the exclusivity of it, or because of the branding, that they lose track and lose focus of is ultimately about learning as much as you can, becoming as well-rounded as you can, and ambitious enough to go out and create connections. Because the Duke name, the Harvard name, the Yale name, it may get you in the door because you may pass a paper test, but you still have to pass the personal test, right?
Yeah. And that's why I said that, it's really on the individual student to get out there and, make connections to actually get yourself a job, because it's really not about, where you went to school at or what you know. It's really about who you know. Because if you have those relationships, someone can just snap a finger and make sure that you get a job or put you in a position to get an interview to get a job. And a lot of students don't realize that until they're out here working because they're not, taking the time to, collaborate with others and just get that real world information to, help them, to be productive if they're going into a corporate America setting. And then going back to the aspect where I was saying that college is a business. So let's say you pick a major in, let's say communications, right? Now, what the school is not going to tell you is that, hey, you're picking this major, but guess what? This major doesn't have a high employment demand. So that means you're picking a major that when you graduate, the odds of you getting a job are very slim to none. So it takes the student's responsibility to understand and do research to make sure that they're picking majors that are in demand. So a lot of majors that are in demand nowadays, you got your technology sectors, engineering, medical fields. Those are the majors that you should actually put more focus into. And I know passion pays a lot. People say, hey, well, you should pick something that you're passionate about, which is true. But at the same time, too, passion doesn't always pay bills. And what ends up happening is you have a lot of students that pick these majors and then they graduate. And let's say they do get a job, right? But let's say 2, 4, 5 years later, they want more out of life. Their expenses are increasing, but their income isn't increasing, right? So what they end up doing is they make a career change, right? So sometimes that career change requires them to do what? Go back and get additional education. So let's look at the big picture, right? So let's say you graduate school, right? Let's say you owe $60,000 in school debt, right? You owe $60,000, right? So let's say you graduate, you get a job, now you want to buy a home, right? So of course, depending on where you live, that home might be pretty expensive. So let's say you owe $60,000, right? And then let's say you buy a home for $150,000, right? So now you're up to we're at $210,000, right? $210,000 in debt, right? Now let's say you get married. So 9 times out of 10, the person you married, they're probably gonna have debt as well, right? So let's say you married someone else, right? And they owe $40,000. No, let's move it up a little bit. Let's say they owe another $60,000 as well, right? So we're at $210,000, we added 60. Now you're at $270,000 in debt. Now, let's say your income's only like $100,000. How you gonna pay that money back?
Right.
And people don't make decisions based off of finances. A lot of students don't when they're making educational decisions because they might not have someone in their life that's actually telling them, hey, well, I know you want to get more education, but is it going to be a good return on education? Like, for example, a lot of people want to go back and get their master's or an MBA. I have an MBA as well, but I was strategic when I went back and got my MBA. I wasn't going to pay a lot of money to get my MBA if I know it wasn't going to, pay out the results that I was expecting to. So let's say, for example, if you graduate and you owe $60,000 in debt, right?
Right.
But then you're working for a couple of years and you're not making the money you want, right? So you say, hey, well, I need to get a master's to increase my education, right? To increase my income. So then you go get that master's, right? But now let's say that master's costs you $40,000. So you had 60 plus 40. Now you had $100,000 in debt. But let's say you're only making like $45,000. How are you gonna pay that back?
Right. Right.
So
Exactly.
my thing is before you spend large amounts of money in your education, you need to make sure that you have a plan set to where you can appropriately and afford to pay those student loans off. Because reality is, a lot of people go to the grave and they still own loans.
Yeah. Yeah. That's happening every day. That's happening every day. Yeah. So I thank you so much for this valuable information. And again, just to recap, know exactly what you're going to college for and have the end in mind first, as Stephen Covey would say in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, right? You begin with the end in mind. So you already know exactly or have a sense of idea of your lifestyle that you want to live and a job and how well that market plays. And then in the meantime, from going from the concept of that ideal to throughout college, you can refine, reshape yourself and develop relationships and pick up skills and tools and etc. in order to get to that point. Because I've seen many people, and I know many people who went to college for not 4 years, they graduated in 5 years, got a master's degree and owe all this money, but have a state job getting paid very minimal. But the truth is, if they would have been more strategic in the beginning, then they wouldn't be in that position. But you learn from experience. So they always say, if I knew then what I know now, things would be different. So I really appreciate you offering this information, brother.
Thank you.
Yeah. So please, I'd like to give you the last word and tell everyone how to contact you or how to reach out to you.
My website is www.theyouthadvisor.com. So you can go on our website, purchase my book, see some videos. Also, my book can be found on Amazon as well as Barnes & Nobles if you want to get the soft cover and the ebook as well. So that's where you can find me at. Also, you can find me on Facebook at The Youth Advisor and all my social media, Twitter, YouTube as always, is The Youth Advisor as well.
All right. Well, I really hope you all enjoyed this segment and found it very informational and beneficial. And until next time, my friends, be blessed and be encouraged.